Have you ever heard someone say something that completely caught you off guard? Well, Jesus once said something that might really surprise you. In the Bible, there's a moment where Jesus tells some people, "I never knew you." Now, that might not sound too strange at first, but when you think about it, it's pretty shocking. Jesus, who is supposed to know everything, is saying he doesn't know certain people. But what did he really mean by that? This isn't just some random statement. It's actually a really important teaching that goes right to the heart of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And if we don't get it right, we might be missing out on something super important about our faith. Now, here's why this matters so much. Imagine thinking you're on the right path, doing all the right things, maybe even telling others about Jesus. But then, at the end of it all, you hear those words, "I never knew you." That would be heartbreaking, wouldn't it? It's like studying hard for a test, feeling confident, and then finding out you got everything wrong. This is why we need to dig deep and really understand what Jesus meant. It's not just about knowing some Bible facts or being able to quote scripture. It's about something much more important, our relationship with Jesus himself. So, let's look at where Jesus actually said this. It's found in the book of Matthew, chapter 7, verses 21 to 23. Jesus is giving what's called the Sermon on the Mount, which is basically a long teaching about how to live as his follower. He's talking to a crowd of people, and he's getting to the end of his sermon. In this part, Jesus is explaining that not everyone who calls him Lord will enter the kingdom of heaven. He says that on Judgment Day, many will say to him, "Lord, Lord, didn't we do all these great things in your name?" But to some, he'll respond, "I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers." Now, that might sound harsh, but Jesus is trying to make a really important point. He's saying that just doing things, even good things, isn't enough. There's something more that he's looking for. You see, Jesus isn't interested in people just going through the motions. He's not impressed by people who just say the right words or do the right actions if their hearts aren't in the right place. What he's really looking for is a genuine relationship with us. Think about it like this. Imagine you had a friend who only talked to you when they needed something. They'd say nice things to you, maybe even do favors for you, but only because they wanted something in return. Would you feel like they really knew you? Would you feel like you had a real friendship? Probably not. That's kind of what Jesus is getting at here. He's saying that some people might do religious things, like praying or going to church, or even doing good deeds, but they're not really interested in knowing him. They're just doing these things for show, or because they think it'll get them something they want. So what does Jesus really want? He wants us to know him, and for him to know us. But what does that mean? Well, it's kind of like any other relationship. When you really know someone, you spend time with them. You talk to them, you listen to them, you share your life with them. For Jesus, this means more than just saying prayers or reading the Bible, although those things are important. It means living your life with him. It means talking to him throughout your day, not just when you need something. It means trying to understand what he wants and doing your best to live that way. It means being honest with him about your struggles and your joys. There's a big difference between knowing about someone and actually knowing them. You might know a lot of facts about a famous person, but that doesn't mean you know them personally. It's the same with Jesus. Some people know a lot about Jesus. They can quote Bible verses, they know the stories, but they don't really know him personally. Jesus is saying that on Judgment Day, some people will be surprised. They'll list all the things they did in his name. Maybe they preached or did miracles or helped people, but Jesus will say he never knew them. Why? Because they never took the time to really know him. They were so busy doing things for him that they forgot to be with him. This teaching from Jesus also warns us about the danger of fooling ourselves. It's possible to think we're doing great in our spiritual life when we're actually missing the point. We might be doing all the right things on the outside, but if our heart isn't really connected to Jesus, we're missing what's most important. It's like if you tried to have a relationship with someone by just doing things for them, but never actually talking to them or spending time with them. You might think you have a great relationship, but the other person would probably feel like they don't really know you at all. This is why Jesus' words are so important. They remind us to check our hearts. Are we just going through the motions of religion? Or are we really seeking to know Jesus and let him know us? So, if doing good deeds isn't enough, what does true faith look like? Well, Jesus gives us some clues in other parts of his teaching. He talks about loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. He talks about loving your neighbor as yourself. He talks about following him, even when it's hard. True faith, the kind where Jesus really knows us, is about letting his love change us from the inside out. It's about being honest with him about our struggles and letting him help us grow. It's about trying to see the world and other people the way he does. When Jesus really knows us, it shows in how we live. We become more loving, more forgiving, more generous. We start to care about the things he cares about. We still mess up sometimes, but we're quick to admit it and ask for his help to do better. Now, all of this might sound a bit scary. You might be thinking, what if Jesus doesn't really know me? But here's the good news. Jesus wants to know you. He's not trying to keep people out. He's inviting people in. He's just being honest about what that really means. Remember, Jesus said he came to seek and save the lost. He told stories about how God is like a shepherd who leaves the 99 sheep to find the one that's lost. He's not waiting for us to get everything right before he'll know us. He's reaching out, wanting to know us right now, just as we are. The invitation is open to everyone. No matter what you've done, no matter how far you feel from God, Jesus is inviting you into a real relationship with him. He wants to know you, and for you to know him. So, how can we make sure we're in that group that Jesus knows? Well, it starts with being real with him. Talk to him like you talk to a friend. Tell him about your day, your worries, your joys. Ask him for help when you need it. Then, take time to listen. Read what he said in the Bible and think about what it means for your life. When you read about how he treated people, try to treat others the same way. When you read about what he said was important, make those things important in your life too. Also, remember that knowing Jesus isn't just a private thing. He talks a lot about being part of a community of believers. So find a church or a group of Christians you can connect with. Share your journey with them, learn from them, and serve others together. Getting to know Jesus isn't something that happens overnight. It's a journey that lasts a lifetime. There will be times when you feel really close to him and times when he feels far away. There will be times when you mess up and times when you see him working in amazing ways in your life. The important thing is to keep at it. Keep talking to him. Keep trying to live the way he taught. Keep being honest about where you're struggling. Remember, Jesus isn't looking for perfect people. He's looking for people who genuinely want to know him and let him work in their lives. As you go on this journey, you'll find that knowing Jesus changes you. You might find yourself caring more about others, being more patient, more kind. You might find yourself seeing the world differently, noticing things you never noticed before. That's all part of really knowing Jesus and letting him know you. When we talk about Jesus knowing us, it's important to remember that he already knows everything about us. He knows our thoughts, our fears, our dreams, even the things we try to hide from everyone else. And here's the amazing thing. He loves us anyway. Jesus knowing us isn't about him gathering information. It's about us letting him into every part of our lives. It's about being real with him, not trying to hide our flaws or pretend we've got it all together. It's about trusting that he loves us even when we mess up and letting that love change us. There's something incredibly powerful about being truly known. In our everyday lives, we often hide parts of ourselves, afraid that if people really knew us, they wouldn't like us. But with Jesus, we can be fully known and fully loved at the same time. When Jesus knows us, really knows us, it gives us a sense of security that nothing else can. We don't have to pretend anymore. We don't have to try to earn his love. We can relax in the knowledge that he sees us completely and loves us anyway. This kind of relationship with Jesus can change how we see ourselves and how we treat others. When we know we're loved, not for what we do but for who we are, it frees us to love others the same way. We can be more patient, more forgiving, more understanding, because that's how Jesus is with us. Knowing Jesus isn't a one-time event. It's not like you check a box and you're done. It's an ongoing relationship that grows and deepens over time. Just like any friendship, It takes time and effort to maintain and grow. This means that even if you've known Jesus for years, there's always more to discover. You might read a Bible passage you've read 100 times before and suddenly see something new in it. You might face a challenge in your life and see Jesus work in a way you've never experienced before. This ongoing nature of knowing Jesus is actually pretty exciting. It means your faith can always be fresh, always growing, always discovering new things. It's not about following a set of rules, but about a living, dynamic relationship with the Creator of the universe. One of the beautiful things about knowing Jesus is that it's not just for the big, dramatic moments of life. It's for the everyday, ordinary moments too. Jesus wants to be part of your whole life, not just the parts that seem spiritual. This means you can talk to Jesus while you're doing the dishes, or driving to work, or trying to figure out a problem at school. You can ask for his help when you're dealing with a difficult person, or when you're trying to make a tough decision. As you practice including Jesus in these everyday moments, you'll start to see him working in ways you might have missed before. You might notice little coincidences that seem like answers to prayer. You might find yourself reacting to situations with more patience or kindness than you normally would. These are all signs that you're getting to know Jesus better and he's working in your life. While knowing Jesus is a personal relationship, it's not meant to be a solitary one. Jesus talked a lot about his followers being part of a community, like a family. This is why being part of a church or a group of other believers is so important. When we share our journey of knowing Jesus with others, a few things happen. First, we can learn from each other. Someone else might have an insight into a Bible passage that helps you understand it better, or they might share how they've seen Jesus work in their life, which encourages you in your own faith. Second, we can support each other. Following Jesus isn't always easy, and there will be times when we struggle or doubt. Having a community around us can provide encouragement, prayer, and practical help during these times. Lastly, serving others together is a big part of knowing Jesus. He talked a lot about loving our neighbors and caring for those in need. When we do this as a community, we're putting into practice the things Jesus taught, and we often find that we experience his presence in powerful ways as we serve. As we get to know Jesus better, something amazing starts to happen. We start to change. This change isn't about trying harder to be good or following a set of rules. It's a natural result of spending time with Jesus and letting his love work in our lives. You might find that things that used to bother you don't seem as important anymore. You might find yourself more patient with difficult people or more willing to forgive when someone hurts you. You might start to see people the way Jesus sees them, with compassion and love. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it's not always smooth or easy. There will be times when you struggle, times when you fall back into old habits. But over time, as you keep pursuing this relationship with Jesus, you'll start to see changes in your attitudes, your actions, and your heart. There's a deep joy that comes from knowing that Jesus knows you and loves you. It's not a surface-level happiness that depends on your circumstances. It's a deep-seated joy that comes from knowing you're loved unconditionally, that you have a purpose, and that nothing can separate you from God's love. This joy can sustain you even in difficult times. When life is hard, when you're facing challenges or sorrows, you can hold on to the knowledge that Jesus knows exactly what you're going through. He's not distant or uninterested. He's right there with you, knowing you, loving you, and working in your life. The joy of being known by Jesus also gives you the freedom to be yourself. You don't have to pretend to be someone you're not. You don't have to hide your struggles or your doubts. You can be honest about who you are, knowing that Jesus loves you just as you are, while also helping you become the best version of yourself. Understanding true relationship with Jesus. When Jesus says, "I never knew you," he's pointing out a big difference between just doing religious things and having a real relationship with him. It's like the difference between knowing about a famous person and actually being their friend. You might know all sorts of facts about a celebrity, but that doesn't mean you really know them. In the same way, some people might know a lot about Jesus. They might go to church, say prayers, or even do good things in his name. But Jesus is saying that's not enough. He wants more than that. He wants us to really know him and for him to really know us. Think about your closest friends. You don't just know facts about them, right? You spend time with them, you talk to them, you share your life with them. That's the kind of relationship Jesus wants with us. He wants us to talk to him throughout our day, not just when we need something. He wants us to try to understand what he cares about and to care about those things too. This means being honest with Jesus about everything: our joys, our struggles, our doubts, our fears. It means trying to see the world the way he sees it. It means letting his love change the way we think and act. Now, here's something really important to understand. Jesus' words warn us about the danger of fooling ourselves. It's possible to think we're doing great in our spiritual life when we're actually missing the point entirely. Imagine if you try to have a relationship with someone by just doing things for them, but never actually talking to them or spending time with them. You might think you have a great relationship, but the other person would probably feel like they don't really know you at all. That's kind of what Jesus is talking about here. Some people might be doing all sorts of religious things, thinking they're building a relationship with God. But if they're not actually connecting with Jesus himself, they're missing what's most important. This is why Jesus' words are so important. They remind us to check our hearts. Are we just going through the motions of religion? Or are we really seeking to know Jesus and let him know us? Are we doing things for Jesus, or are we doing things with Jesus? It's easy to get caught up in doing good deeds or religious activities and think that's what it's all about. But Jesus is saying that without a real relationship with him, all of that misses the mark. So, if doing good deeds isn't enough, what does true faith look like? Well, Jesus gives us some clues in other parts of his teaching. He talks about loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. He talks about loving your neighbor as yourself. He talks about following him, even when it's hard. True faith, the kind where Jesus really knows us, is about letting his love change us from the inside out. It's not just about changing our behavior, but about changing our hearts. It's about being honest with him about our struggles and letting him help us grow. It's about trying to see the world and other people the way he does. When Jesus really knows us, it shows in how we live. We become more loving, more forgiving, more generous. We start to care about the things he cares about. We still mess up sometimes, but we're quick to admit it and ask for his help to do better. This kind of faith isn't about being perfect. It's about being real with Jesus and letting him work in our lives. It's about trusting him even when things are tough. It's about letting his love flow through us to others. Remember, Jesus didn't say, "Away from me, you who weren't perfect enough." He said, "I never knew you." That's because he's more interested in our hearts and in having a real relationship with us than he is in perfect behavior. True faith is about letting Jesus into every part of our lives, not just the religious parts, but everything. It's about talking to him throughout our day, asking for his help with decisions, thanking him for good things, and even being honest with him when we're angry or confused. It's also about listening to Jesus. This means reading what he said in the Bible and really thinking about what it means for our lives. It means being willing to change when we realize we're not living the way he taught. It means being part of a community of other believers who can help us understand and follow Jesus better. True faith isn't always easy. Sometimes it means doing things that are hard or that go against what everyone else is doing. But it's always about staying connected to Jesus, trusting him, and letting his love shape our lives. Now that we understand what Jesus meant, let's talk about how we can make sure we're in the group that Jesus knows. It's not about following a set of rules, but about building a real relationship with him. Here are some practical steps you can take. First, talk to Jesus like you talk to a friend. You don't need fancy words or a special place. Just be honest with him about your day, your worries, your joys. Tell him what you're thinking and feeling. Ask him for help when you need it. Second, take time to listen. This often means reading the Bible, which is like a letter from God to us. When you read about how Jesus treated people, think about how you can treat others the same way. When you read about what he said was important, think about how to make those things important in your life too. Third, spend time with other people who are trying to know Jesus. Find a church or a group of Christians you can connect with. Share your journey with them, learn from them, and serve others together. Jesus often works through other people to teach us and help us grow. Fourth, look for Jesus in your everyday life. He's not just for Sunday mornings or when you're in trouble. Try to include him in all parts of your day. Ask for his help with work or school. Thank him for good things that happen. Look for ways he might be working in the world around you. Finally, be patient with yourself. Getting to know Jesus is a lifelong journey. There will be ups and downs, times when you feel close to him and times when he feels far away. The important thing is to keep at it, to keep reaching out to him. When Jesus said, "I never knew you," some people might misunderstand what he meant. Let's clear up a few common misunderstandings. First, some people think Jesus meant that if you don't do enough good deeds, he won't know you. But that's not it at all. Remember, he said this to people who had done lots of good things. It's not about how many good deeds you do, but about whether you have a real relationship with Jesus. Second, some might think Jesus was saying he literally didn't know who these people were. But Jesus, being God, knows everything about everyone. What he meant was that he didn't have a close, personal relationship with them. Third, some people might think this means they need to be perfect for Jesus to know them. But that's not true either. Jesus knows we're not perfect. He wants us to be real with him, to admit when we mess up, and to let him help us grow. Lastly, some might think Jesus was trying to scare people or keep them out of heaven. But that's not his goal at all. He's actually inviting us into a deeper, more real relationship with him. He's being honest about what that relationship should look like. When we really know Jesus and let him know us, it changes us. This change isn't about trying harder to be good or following a set of rules. It's a natural result of spending time with Jesus and letting his love work in our lives. You might find that things that used to bother you don't seem as important anymore. You might find yourself more patient with difficult people or more willing to forgive when someone hurts you. You might start to see people the way Jesus sees them, with compassion and love. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it's not always easy. There will be times when you struggle, times when you fall back into old habits. But over time, as you keep pursuing this relationship with Jesus, you'll start to see changes in your attitudes, your actions, and your heart. Knowing Jesus can also give you a sense of purpose and peace. When you know that the Creator of the universe knows you and loves you, it can help you face life's challenges with more confidence. You know you're not alone, and that your life has meaning. Remember, Jesus isn't looking for perfect people. He's looking for people who genuinely want to know him and let him work in their lives. He takes us as we are and helps us become more like him over time. So, what did Jesus really mean when he said, "I never knew you"? He was talking about the difference between just doing religious things and having a real, personal relationship with him. He wants us to know him, and for him to know us, in a deep and meaningful way. This isn't about being perfect or doing everything right. It's about being real with Jesus, talking to him, listening to him, and letting his love change us from the inside out. It's about including him in all parts of our lives, not just the religious parts. Remember, Jesus isn't saying this to scare us or keep us away. He's inviting us into a closer relationship with him. He wants to know us, and he wants us to know him. And when we do, it can change everything. So take some time to think about your own relationship with Jesus. Are you just going through the motions, or do you really know him? Are you letting him know you? If you feel like you've been missing this real relationship, it's not too late to start. Jesus is always ready to welcome us into a deeper relationship with him. Knowing Jesus isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. It can bring joy, peace, and purpose to our lives that nothing else can. So let's take Jesus up on his invitation. Let's get to know him and let him know us. Because in the end, that's what really matters.